we do have Charles right now. We have reconnected with Charles Eruka for an update on the INEC Collation Center there in Benin. Good morning, Charles. I hope you can hear us now.
Good morning, Shaitan. I can hear you loud and clear.
Fantastic. This is Oshiomhole. We would just love to, for you to give us an update on what's been going on. I mean, I believe that collation has it started. I mean, they told us that the center would open about 10 a.m. and now it's about, it's almost 11 a.m.
Unfortunately, probably because it's raining now, so that might just be a factor. But then don't also forget that there is what is called African time. I really don't know what that means, but then we were supposed to have started at 10 a.m. A few moments ago, the INEC resident electoral commissioner stepped in here and said we should exercise patience, that the final collation exercise will be starting any moment now. That's the update. He was here accompanied by a battery of senior security officials, and it was less than a minute that he addressed the crowd gathered in here. But as you can see behind me, all is set. The chairs are there, the microphones are also arranged, and all we are waiting for is for when our patience will be justified, and we are waiting for that to happen soon.
All right, Charles, talk to us about those who are allowed to come into the collation center, aside INEC officials and the media. What about the parties? There are 17 parties in contest, 3 are leading, 2 are neck and neck. Who is allowed to come in? Agents, returning officers, or who exactly? Because this is at the heart of why Governor Obaseki claimed that he went to the INEC office last night. So who has been allowed? Have you seen the agents of all the leading political parties present, waiting for INEC to be ready for them?
From what I have seen, anyone with an accreditation tag is allowed in here, and that includes party agents, it includes election observers, it includes election monitors, it includes members of other media, and it also includes members of the civil society organizations who have been duly accredited to cover the elections in Edo State. So from what I see here, anyone with a proper accreditation tag from the Independent National Electoral Commission is allowed in this place. So there is no discrimination. You know, ahead of the elections, there was the proviso from INEC that people should get accredited, because it is with that accreditation tag that you would be allowed access to the state collation center, or even allowed to move around during the elections themselves. Therefore, anyone who has been duly, properly accredited and has an identification tag is allowed in this place. For instance, I have with me an election observer from the Advocacy for People's Right and Justice, the Domestic Election Observer 2024 Edo State Governorship Election, Mr. Victor Giwa. Mr. Giwa.
Thank you very much.
Did you encounter any problems finding your way into this place?
Well, I did. Of course, I'm here. I didn't encounter any problem, but the stories I was hearing before was that, observers and some other persons were not allowed in. But I came and I showed the military, of course, a lot of military men around. I showed the military men my ID, and he said, just go in. So that was how I found myself here.
But when you were coming in, I'm very sure some other people were also trying to gain entrance. Did you encounter or did you observe any situation where the security officials at the gate prevent anyone with an identification tag or with any political affiliation, were any of them prevented from coming in?
I did not see any. I just came in about 25 minutes ago. I did not see anybody at the gate or within the environment who was resisting or who is trying to convince the people at the gates that he is supposed to be in here. Of course, the people I saw were all policemen and the military men. So maybe that would have happened before I came, but I didn't see any.
because our people in Lagos would want to know if there has been any issues with gaining access into this place as an election observer. What has been your impression of the conduct of the security officials at this venue?
Oh, well, for now, I think, firstly, this place is militarized. Of everywhere around, military, police, and all of that. I don't know the reasons. But in terms of the way the security agency have reacted so far, I think it's been fair. It's been fair. I've not physically seen any overreactions from the security agency as at now.
All right, thank you very much, Victor Giwa.
Thank you so much.
All right. The representative of the People's Advocacy for Justice in the Edo State governorship election, one election observer. Well, you've heard it from the horse's mouth, so it is not just my observation alone. One of the election observers has also confirmed that there are no issues concerning access to this place as long as you are duly accredited and as long as you are duly confirmed to be in this place. So the security officials have also behaved themselves maturely and professionally. So right now we do not have any incidents of anyone, regardless of political affiliation. As long as you are properly and duly identified and accredited, you have access to the State Collation Center. Oji.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Charles. But very briefly, I mean, Arise just went straight into the press conference that was put together by PDP, announcing, or rather informing the public about the numbers of the votes that were cast at their different polling units. I wonder if there's been any reactions from the resident electoral commissioners about this press conference that was held at a separate location, knowing fully well that the whole nation is waiting for INEC to start these announcements.
Well, the People's Democratic Party's press conference is taking place not anywhere near the State Collation Center. And when the resident electoral commissioner came in here earlier, he did not make any mention or any reference to what the People's Democratic Party is doing. Perhaps he might touch on that during the collation of results, maybe just to clear the air on what is going on between the electoral umpire and the PDP. But for now, he has not said anything as yet or made any reference directly or indirectly to the press conference by the People's Democratic Party. We'll just wait for that when he and his crew arrive to commence the final collation exercise. That much I can tell you.
Charles, would like to thank you very much, and thank you for monitoring all that process, and we will link up with you again when the collation begins. Well, we're still on
We will be looking forward to that. Thank you very much, Lagos.
Thank you. We're still on the special coverage of the Edo Decides 2024, and as we continue to dissect emerging issues, we're now being joined by journalist and public affairs analyst Taiwo Olapade, and from Arise Abuja studios, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, who is Dean Postgraduate Studies at Bayes University, Abuja. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us on the morning show this morning. Well, I'll bring the conversation to you right here in Lagos. Thank you for joining us this morning. I mean, I'd love for you to unpack everything that we have been, witnessing all day, today especially, given the last press conference from the members of the PDP there. We did cover the situation report there, where they made some announcements of polling unit results that they had in their possession. I mean, there have been a lot of reactions that have trailed that announcement, but also the PDP are not the only parties that have come out to make an announcement. I mean, we have here an APC statement. I'll read it out to you. They actually said our party, the All Progressives candidate, All Progressives Congress candidate in 2024 governorship election is set to be announced as winner of the contest by INEC. They brought out this statement. I mean, what would you call this? Is this an announcement? I mean, what's really going on between these two parties at this moment?
Well, it all started when INEC allowed the political parties in this contest to flag up their campaign. And all along, we have been saying, Edo decide, Edo decide. It is at this moment that Edo decide slogan is like a turning point for the people of Edo State at this moment. And I'm not surprised at the what has been playing out in the last couple of hours among particularly the major contestants, in this election, the APC, likewise the PDP. But sincerely, it is wrong for anyone outside the electoral umpire, which we know according to the law, which is INEC, to have announced results of even a local government or even a councillorship election. It is wrong, and it is in violation of the Electoral Act. And I want to see INEC also taking this, legally, because ordinarily, if it had happened to be someone like me, ordinary citizen, that have declared these results, of course, I know what could have happened, immediately. But because the governor, we can say he has immunity, fine. But having immunity doesn't allow you to also do something that is also in violation of the law. And sincerely, I anticipate that even this election, we go into litigation, whether we like it or not. Because, and moreover, APC has a candidate in this election, Senator Monday, PDP, Igodalo. But more importantly, I see this election more as a survival of the fittest, particularly between Oshiomhole and Obaseki. It looks like they are not on the ballot. But if you look at the build-up to this election, they are even spoken more than the candidate of each of their different political parties. So it's like a survival of the fittest between Oshiomhole and Obaseki. And that's the reason why we are here, or we are where we are today regarding the Edo election.
I like your thoughts on that, but I want to also switch quickly to our Abuja studios to get a professor to weigh in on, I'm talking about Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, who is the Dean of Postgraduate Studies at Baz University. Now, you just heard what he said about the PDP press conference, which is making the rounds because of the statements that were made there. He's also, Mr. Olapade has talked about legal consequences to these kind of actions. Is that where your head is at as well, looking at the statement that PDP has put out and subsequently APC as well?
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Sheyi, Steve, and Jenix. I think the release of the results appears preemptive and is capable of causing confusion, authoring or disrupting the electioneering process like we know it. There are 3 stages in every election. The pre-election stage, where the political parties and the candidates are most active, campaigning, selling their programs to the people. And of course, during the election, the most active person or entity is actually INEC, where, yes, we can be critical of them, but we need to allow them, we often allow them to do their job. And afterwards, the post-election stage, they are resort to the judiciary, where we allow due process, due diligence, the course of the law to take, to get down to work, through the instrument of those who might think that their case should be litigated. I think over time we've been following this course, and for us to now resort, to taking the laws into our hand, trying to disrupt the process, especially coming from respectable, senior government officials, I think is a new law that we are arriving at, which it shouldn't be acceptable at all. Yes, sometimes we see some of these results released in the process of disinformation and misinformation on the social media, but of course we know that social media is nebulous. It thrives on anonymity. If we are seeing it on social media, oftentimes we disregard them, we discountenance them, or we deny them, or they are retweets and reposts, But for us now to be having physical release of the results, by senior public officials, senior citizens that we look up to, that are mentors, that are supposed to be concerned about leaving good legacy towards the development, the sustenance, and the stabilization of our democratic process. Doing this, it shouldn't be something that we should welcome at all. And we need patience in all of this. We know that the build-up to the election has been very, very frenetic, very frenzied, considering the very strong characters involved in it. We expected that, yes, at the end of the day, even if we're not going to have congratulatory messages between them, we're taking it for granted that they will seek the regular third-party intervention, which is the judiciary. And that's a route we will have expected that any concerned, agitated, disagreeing person will have taken, but not to ordinarily take the laws into our hands, no matter how vexed we are, no matter how provoked or irritated that we are, considering the power that they wield, and considering that they've got the influence to get a lot of people, followers behind them, who could be much more, who could be much more provoked and could also get on the streets, and disrupt the peace of the land. It comes back to what we've been talking about our attitude to the democratic and the electionary process, on how we regard winning and losing. Winning shouldn't be the end of. Winning requires us to be magnanimous, and losing also requires us to be gallant. To know that there's life after every election, whether we win or whether we lose, as the case could be, gentlemen. Steve and the ladies.
Steve and the angels. Thanks, Prof. I'll stay with you very quickly. Beyond the desperation from the two political parties, I know that a lot of people will say that there's no point comparing apples with oranges. We saw PDP go live on TV and made something that looked like an announcement, as opposed to what is being bandied as a statement from APC that that nobody can verify. So there's a bit of difference. But what I'm saying is, beyond the seeming desperation on the part of the two political parties who are juggling for power, how do you react to the fresh statement from INEC, which at least we can authenticate, giving assurance that they will stick with the Electoral Act of 2022 and ensure that what is proper is done? My question to you, in addition to that, is that do you think that democracy has been deepened by the style and the method that INEC has adopted, highlighting the issues that they have had, even acknowledging the fact that yesterday one of the staff members was injured in the stampede that ensued in one of the local government areas, and also condemning the protest seemingly last night, basically almost ganging up against INEC at a point. And they are saying that we will not be intimidated. We will proceed because the result that they have so far shows that collation has been done in practically all the local government areas, 18 of them in Edo State. And all they have to do from 10, which we believe anytime from now, is to now properly collate and make the necessary announcement. What are your thoughts on this firm stance by INEC?
Yeah, Steve, thank you. Like I said earlier, INEC is the entity that's in the eye that is in the eye of the storm, as it should be in the election stage. And of course, we are all looking up to them to see we're watching their actions and their inactions to see what they are going to do and what they are doing, whether they're going to do it well or not. And the onus is going to be on them, to provide information as much as possible, if not to reassure citizens, but also to show that, they've got the ability, to walk us through, to take us through the process in which they are in charge of. Of course, information we know is the oxygen that we need. At this time, there's no reason for suspense. If there's any sign of suspense, of course, there could be suspicion, because there's mutual distrust among the main parties. And of course, we know, going by our history, we know how politicians can be very smart in a period of confusion. And we know that their preoccupation is to get themselves announced, whether correctly or incorrectly. And of course, they often say, okay, they do not want to be the party that will go to court, So all the parties, just concerned about winning the election. And against that background, we want to trust the umpire to deliver the goods as much as possible, as best as possible. And one step towards doing this is to feed us with the right information, continue to give us the assurance that they are not being intimidated, they are going to continue to be impartial, and of course they are not going to bow to the pressure tactics of desperate politicians or desperate individuals who might want to compromise them. And I think maybe they've just done a little bit of that. We may not be too satisfied with their conduct so far, coming from the complaints that we recorded last year. With delayed arrival of personnel, delayed commencement of voting process, and all of those logistic problems may be dissatisfying. But of course, we are at this stage now of collation, and they said we're going to start at 10 o'clock. They have not started. At the last time I checked, at about 11 o'clock. Yes, these are downsides, but of course, with whatever little effort they can make, to reassure us that they are still in charge is definitely welcome, and definitely most welcome coming against the background of the continuous inordinate, pressure tactics, of desperate political parties, desperate individuals who are otherwise respectable, fashionable, and reputable, as the case could be. Sometimes we do know that they drop the bar, they drop the ball, to the emotions and the sentiments that the election could corral, but I think it's also it's right at this point for us to call upon them, to be careful, because whatever happens in any particular state could be a signal to the next state, and of course, where election is going to hold, and indeed to the general elections. And of course, there are lessons to be learned in every election. From those lessons, we need to be thinking about solutions. So the conduct of election should be a learning curve towards the evolution of solutions for the deepening of our democracy. And the individuals involved should know that they are teachers in the learning curve, and they should not shirk their responsibilities. Steve, Oji, and Sheyi.
All right, Dr. Adeniyi, thank you for unpacking that. I'd like to stay on INEC's preparedness, and I'd like to bring this question over to you, Mr. Olapade, here in the studio. I'd like for you to, assess their preparedness, that is the INEC, and, we've heard reports about how, so in some polling units there were BVAS malfunction. We also heard from the REC in Edo State there, Onoha, saying that, only poor network will hinder, electronic transfer of results. I'd like for you to highlight that aspect of what they could have done more, or what they could have done better for an off-cycle election like this. And I'd also like for you to touch on, some of the allegations that were made, especially in that PDP live coverage, press conference that we took. There was an allegation by Aswe Igodalo, who actually said that, he has results of over 20 polling units, right? And he says that, the total votes there are more than the accredited voters. What would you say with regards to that?
Well, let me start by saying that, unfortunately, INEC gave room for suspicion, for speculation, from the start of this election yesterday morning, because, like you said, it's an off-cycle election,
yes.
Just one state.
Yes.
We are not talking of general elections. And whether we like it or not, Ondo State in November, INEC will still go to Ondo State to do or to conduct similar governorship election. INEC had enough time, sincerely. I don't know. Of course, sometimes like rain, we had rain. Nobody has monopoly. We don't have control over the rain. But even the logistics, INEC had enough time. Elections supposed to have started by 8 o'clock in most of the polling unit, and it will end around 2 or 2:30 thereabout. But even as yesterday, where we were on the same program, we were hearing a report of election not have commenced in many polling units, and people were saying that, logistics, they didn't see INEC officials. INEC was not coming out then to also even address the people. People came out as early as 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, to be at the polling unit, and they waited 3 hours, no INEC officials inside. So that gives room for speculation or for suspicion on the part of the people, which sincerely it was bound to be. But for election results, the major political candidates in this election, of course, we had about 17 of them, 1 female and 16 male. I'm sure some of them, they contested just to up the antics of their political CV, to say, oh, former governorship candidates. Some knew from day one that they were not going to win. Some contested to also negotiate. We have seen that happen so many couple of times. And I know that eventually, initially, we are hearing that it's going to be between Akpata, the PDP, and APC. But now, it has been narrowed down to 2 major political parties. And like I said earlier, this election is more of a survival of the fittest between Oshiomhole. You can't rule that out. And God in Obaseki.
He's not on the ticket.
No, they are not on the ballot. But from all indications, it seems like I want to know who we assume that the role of the godfather, so to say, in Edo State. You know, remember the language of Edonobi Lagos. And we are seeing, also seeing that a bit playing out in this election. And for result, let me emphasize, all the major political parties, they had their agents. They had their polling agents at most of the polling units where election took place. And when the election are announced at the polling unit, they must sign the election results. So for any political party to have claimed victory in this election, you must have a proof. And that's why I said, I see this election, whether we like it or not, it will go to, I know a political party or political parties, we surely want to go to court, which is normal. It is better you go to court to go and win your presumed, victory than to go violence. I wouldn't encourage any of the parties to go the route of violence. But if you know you are not satisfied with the outcome of this election, you have the right, with your proof, to approach the court.
That has been your position since yesterday, because you were also with us, here yesterday during the election day proper.
Yes, sir.
But I also like to draw you back to the issue of preempting INEC, which clearly, as we can see, that it is not just PDP from their press conference, but also APC, because the press statement that we had referred to, Oji mentioned it, and I also mentioned it in my question to Professor Adeniyi, is actually lead, in today's this day. Exactly, and it isn't just about the fact that they're declaring that they have won in 13 local government, but the lead of this day is also saying that it is not only Governor Obaseki that stormed INEC. The first rider there says Akpabio, Obaseki, Sanwo-Olu, Abiodun, Oberewore, Otu, Aiyedatiwa storm INEC office. So it looks like it's a kind of a balance of terror, isn't it?
Balance of power.
Desperation on both sides. That's what I asked Professor Adeniyi. Do you have reassurance that INEC at this point can be intimidated, given the fact that what was meant to start at 10 a.m. is 11:12 now, and they're still not ready? Is there something going on at the back that is making INEC to be delayed?
Well, I want to start by asking this question, that what exactly had really attracted this so much of attention on Edo? What exactly that we're having so much of governors in Edo State? What is the interest in Edo State? That's the question to maybe some of our political
power play, battle of the godfathers, power play.
Maybe, but I want INEC to be upright in concluding this election. Whether they like it or not, they have results. And this election, it started with accreditation with beavers. Number one, if you are not accredited with beavers, there is no room for you to be at the polling unit to cast your ballot. That's number one.
And there ought not to be overvoted.
Yeah, so beavers alone is part of the measure to ensure that this election is credible. So if indeed INEC had applied beavers in this election, definitely the number of accredited voters in each of the polling units, they're accredited by beavers and they're allowed to vote. You know what is expected of the result. Of course, you can't expect everybody to vote in one direction in each of the polling units. Of course, you have the polling agents for each of the major contending political parties. So I don't, but you know, the nature of our politicians, some knew from day one that I'm not going to win, but then they still want to use every other means to ensure that the bamboos INEC, the INEC to do, what they're supposed not to do. I want INEC to stick to their mandate in ensuring that they collect the results transparently, and whatever they do, they are now in the eye of the storm. They must be very careful. They shouldn't allow pressure either from APC or PDP or the power play. They shouldn't allow it to also blindfold them in ensuring that they do this according to what the electoral act says. Whether we like it or not, whether it goes the way of APC or PDP, the other party will still go to court. That one I'm very sure of, because our politicians, they don't want to take defeat. If 17 people is going into contest that eventually is just one winner, how do you expect 2 people to win? Not to talk of 3 or 4 or 5. Somebody must emerge winner.
Not taking defeat or feeling cheated?
If they have the proof to show that, oh, this is the result collated. We have seen some governors, where they call them Supreme Court governors, or they call them maybe taking their victory from the court. We have seen that played out in some states in the past, in previous elections, that they felt cheated. They took their case to the case, and they took the proof there, and the court did the needful. Unfortunately, we don't expect the courts to be the one to tell us who is the winner of one election or the other, but that's the situation that we have found ourselves, because our politicians, whether you like it or not, they will see blue and will say it is red. That's their nature.
Okay, let me come in here, Mr. Olapade, and take it back to our Abuja studios with Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, lending a statement from Mr. Olapade saying that INEC right now is in the eye of the storm as the whole nation awaits. It's 10 o'clock, it's 11:16 now, waiting to hear who the next governor of Edo State is going to be. If you assess everything that they've done from, even in preparations, just like you've broken it down, pre-election, during the election, and now post-election while we await the results, are you confident in INEC, as a neutral body in this, being able to deliver their mandate?
Okay, Sheyi, very important question. Like every other citizen, I'm just waiting, every other observer, I'm just waiting with bated breath, until the final declaration for us to be able to make a proper assessment, of how well our INEC has performed, But in the circumstance, I want to imagine that they are doing their best, because it's an off-season election, where all resources, human and material, are particularly concentrated in a state. It's not stretched across the nation, just concentrated in a state. So ordinarily, it should give room for increased effectivity, increased productivity, ordinarily. But oftentimes, we also know that it may not necessarily be the case, But of course, the odds should be in their favor to deliver properly, because their materials, human and otherwise, are not necessarily stretched. Yeah, yes, they've come up with a statement, which Steve referred to, appreciable statement, just to reassure us. But again, I think there's something they need to do in the immediate circumstance. Yes, they told us that this collation will start at 10. What is causing the delay? These sort of anxieties, these sorts of artificial suspense should not be created at a time like this, where there's tension. Because when you have these kind of delays, this kind of failures to be punctual, it creates room for suspicion and, of course, aggravates the circumstances, the downsides of the circumstances that we have been talking about. I think they should be speak and span, working to schedule, working to time, and do things at the time that they said they are going to do it. I do not see any reason why, because they are aware of it. We know that many people have not even slept since the election started or on the eve of the election anyway. Yeah, they are stretching themselves and they have enough personnel. So what is the reason why they cannot meet their deadlines and schedules and timelines like they have told us they are going to meet? So the onus is still on them, to be much more responsive and to be above board so that we can see an election that at the end of the day we can judge as free, not just credible and free and fair, but also transparent. And this is not just for their own reputation, but of course in the interest of democracy as a whole, considering how far we have gone so far and how troubled we have been trying to consolidate it as a nation. Sheyi.
All right, Mr. Olapade here. I mean, all eyes on INEC at this point. I mean, but also we all have to wonder why all of these discrepancies are, are at our forefront at this moment. I mean, what role do these political gladiators play with this whole process? I mean, given the fact that we've heard a lot of reports about vote buying, which we were discussing with Komolafe here, Mr. KK, we didn't get to, talk about that. But I'd love for you to shed some light on, the reports of vote buying and what these political gladiators, what role they had to play with that whole process.
Well, for vote buying is against the electoral process. And I know there's a section in the Electoral Act that really applies sanctions, as the case may be, against those who have been found wanting or culpable in this regard. And I really want the FCC to really set an example. There should be consequence. And the reason why we Nigerians, most times we flout the law with so much of impunity is because there is no consequence. And that is why our country is where it is today. No consequence for bad behaviors. And it's very common among all of us. It's very common. No consequence. People do things and they know they will go scot-free. Nobody is, really after them. And it's even so worse for the vulnerables, those who are, maybe the less privileged people. You see people who are high and mighty breaking the laws with so much of, believing that nothing will happen, and eventually nothing will happen. For this very one, we have had elections in the past. Yeah. How much of those who have been who are arrested then, have they been prosecuted to show the world? How many of them?
I also heard that the EFCC deployed their men to the units there. I mean, what was their role?
In the past election,
they made a few arrests.
Are there records?
Yes, we highlighted
Are there records in the past elections? Those who are arrested for either vote buying or vote selling, either
that's the question,
buying or selling.
Right. If they've been sentenced.
Are there records to show that, to prove? So, because people knew that there is no consequence, and because they know they have someone godfather that will say, release those boys. That's the reason why our country is where we are today. No consequence for bad behavior. There are laws. We have so much of laws, but implementation of those laws has been our major problem, and that's where we are not growing. We can only say it by word of mouth. Do we really practice what we preach? And the other question you are talking about, I still believe that the solution to our electoral process or electoral whatever is for us to go back to option E4. I remember that election vividly. Everybody will be on the queue simultaneously at the same time. If it is 10 o'clock, be at your polling unit at 10 o'clock. And when they count, there is no room for you to say you vote here, you want to move to the next. No. You will be, when you are not there at 10 o'clock, you are outside the voting proper. So be on your queue for whether it is APC or Labour or PDP, and they count. From that polling unit, you already know who won at that polling unit.
But shouldn't we be approaching total electronic voting by now, which KK alluded to the other time? If we are returning to what we did 33 years ago.
I also subscribe to that, but our politicians, they know the way they work. And that's the reason why most of them have also opposed to we going the way. You know how much of money that is voted for INEC? Right. And at the end of the day, people see what has happened in this election. So much of money, if you know how much has been voted for this election, and yet, what are we getting? Delayed materials, delayed deployment of personnel and the like. That has been the story, and that has been even since 1999, that we return to democratic rule. We have done about 26 years on broken democratic practice now. What has been the story of INEC? Has it been a very cheerful one?
All right.
So we must go back to option A4. Everybody be on the queue. It will even be less expensive. They count. You know who has won at every of the polling unit, and you can't doctor that result. And that's the reason why our politicians, most of them, have opposed to us going back to that option A4.
All right, thank you, Taiwo. Let me return to Professor Adeniyi. Prof, back to the main issue of the day, which is what everybody is waiting for, the final collation and the announcement. What do you think about the fact that about 93% of the results have been uploaded procedurally on IREV, which of course people, journalists do have access to, and you can therefore extrapolate as to who's leading, where we are. If INEC was meant to start the final collation by 10 at the INEC headquarters, now maybe it will be around noon, shouldn't the 100% of the results be uploaded by that time so that people can say what you uploaded is what you are announcing? And by that time, there wouldn't be any room for hanky-panky, especially now that it looks like we have waited 1.5 hours for INEC to deliver on what he has promised. Do you therefore suspect a kind of a gang-up somewhere, or a kind of, pressure on the INEC towards delivering on his mandate? Prof.
Yeah, thank you, Steve-O. When there are delays like this, it actually becomes very, very worrisome. People easily become much more agitated, because it can be very concerning, especially in a situation where we doubt INEC's level of transparency. And of course, against the overarching absence of trust between government agencies and the rest of us. In that situation, what we need to do is to just wrap up efforts, to enhance trust. And one way to do this is just to be timely and to be precise with promises and to fulfill them as much as possible. And in the circumstance, we're seeing that there's no reason for INEC to create any delay, whether, and most of them, of course, we know can easily be attributed to artificial conditions. And again, remember last year, presidential election, the election was largely discredited because, in many circles, because the result was not uploaded onto IREF, consistent with our drive to introduce technology into the electioneering process. And because of these incomplete uploading of the result onto IREF, it gave room for increased disputes. Credibility of the election was tainted in many circles only on account of that. In the Edo elections, for instance, I think there's a conscious effort for INEC to improve of that. And that is possible, again, because it's an off-season election, an isolated election where all resources can be concentrated onto that spot. So again, yes, they've improved slightly, 90-something%, but there's nothing wrong in us having 100%. If we have 100%, for instance, and consistent with the age, with the free age that we are in, where technologies of communication are everywhere, people can also take advantage of that transparent upload and announce the result like it is done elsewhere. In the United States, for instance, nobody waits for electoral office to announce the election, the result of election. Before you know it, it's announced in the media, and we learn, and all of us watch it live. Often seamless. There's nothing is wrong if we get to this stage. Yes, we're saying that they've done well by getting up more than 90% uploaded, but there's nothing also wrong for us having 100%. In advance of the collation, the physical exercise of collating, because these things are supposed to be complementary to engender the much talked about transparency. And of course, it's not too late in the day, for them to up their ante, because time is running fast. People are already complaining. Press conferences are being addressed left, right, and center. The social media is abused, and when we have a free flow of information like that, it could be a stepping stone to things that are reasonable and unreasonable. And the kind of things that we want in the circumstance are those that will be reasonable. And that's why we will not relent in calling on the authorities to be very, very responsive, to do the needful as quickly as possible so that we can get this done with, as the case could be. Steve.
Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, would like to thank you very much for your insights on the Edo election. Thank you very much indeed. And as well as Mr. Olapade, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the morning show this morning.